Welcome back to Studio 5. It's a choice moms will always have to make, whether to breastfeed or bottle feed. But do we judge each other for that decision? One Utah mom says yes. She recently spoke to Studio 5 about her breastfeeding journey.
My name's Jocelyn Jackman. I'm a mother of 4. When I found out I was pregnant with twins, I was really upset because everybody told me that, oh, you can't, nobody nurses twins, you'll never be able to do it. Breastfeeding for my twins it's been really comforting. It makes me feel like I'm doing something good for my kids. Asher, he was always a skinny baby, but for a while, his first couple of months, he didn't grow very good. But eventually, he didn't gain weight enough, and we had to start supplementing him just once a day. But it was a huge deal for me. I felt guilty because I had decided that I wanted to nurse them. I didn't want to tell people. I started supplementing him, and it was kind of nice to have the free time and to not worry about breastfeeding both of them at night, and then I felt guilt about that too. I'm a neonatal nurse practitioner, so it's schooled into me that breastfeeding is best, and breastfeeding is best, and breastfeeding is best. And although I realized formulas, it's good, it's not perfect, and I felt a lot of guilt that maybe I could try harder, maybe there was something I could do, maybe I wasn't, these women could do it, how come I couldn't? How we feed our babies is such a big deal for people. But recently I got told that I can't nurse my twins somewhere that I've been nursing them in public for a long time. Part of me wants to respect that that's the community decision and that's making people uncomfortable, but then part of me wants to be like, well, I'm just feeding my babies.
Joining me in the studio to discuss this topic more is Christy Porucznik with the Leche League of Salt Lake City. It's a nonprofit group who helps and educates breastfeeding mothers, also life coach and author Connie Sokol. Let's dive in if we can, ladies. I don't care which side of the conversation you fall on or the argument you fall on. Everyone seems to have an opinion about this topic. When did it become so public, do you think?
Well, I don't think that we should talk about this really as an argument. I think it's something where moms need support. And, sometimes the best way to give them support is going to be one way, and sometimes it's going to be another way. But I think it's great that we're talking about breastfeeding.
Just the conversation is happening. Well, and it's happening in a big way, partly because of this new Latch On NYC initiative. Beginning this month, more than half of hospitals in New York City, where they're keeping their formula under lock and key. They're not willingly just giving it to new moms. They have to ask for it, and they have to receive counseling. The Surgeon General has said, quote, "The decision to breastfeed is a personal one, and a mother should not be made to feel guilty if she cannot or chooses not to breastfeed." Now at least one Utah hospital, the University of Utah, moving in that same direction, not making formulas so accessible. Their restrictions, I feel like we should say, are not quite as strict as what we're seeing in New York. Do you think this is a good step, Connie?
I think education is the key, helping moms to make a decision for their particular situation. I have 7 kids, and I've had to do things a little bit differently with each one, simply because my situation every time I've had another child is a little bit different. And I really think the guilt has got to go. Every woman needs to be able to say, I'm going to do what I feel is best for me, the child, and my family, because all of those are a package deal when you have a baby.
Is this a suffocation of choice when we talk about hospitals not willingly giving up the formula? What do you think?
Well, I don't think that there's any other product that hospitals willingly give out. I mean, everything else that you get at the hospital you pay for. And it doesn't really make sense that artificial milk is any different. If you go home with the pain medicine, you definitely paid for it. And so I don't think it's necessarily a suffocation of choice, but I think it's a big part of not setting people up to fail. Like, we know early introduction of artificial milk or something other than breastfeeding leads mom down the road of not breastfeeding sooner. And many women don't achieve their breastfeeding goals. And some of the things that happen around the time of birth set them up to go down that path.
Connie mentioned the guilt, and I've had girlfriends I know who have not even wanted to talk about it among other girlfriends, their decision to bottle feed, because they do feel that guilt. They do feel that shame. How do we shake that? How do we get rid of that as women and, just as you mentioned, support each other?
Well, I think, you know, we can't call names, but it's certainly, I think it's about early education and helping people understand that maybe breastfeeding versus artificial feeding, it's not necessarily just a lifestyle choice. The American Academy of Pediatrics says it's a public health issue. And so we need to figure out what we can do to give moms the tools to be the best moms that they can be, to be the natural moms or the successful moms or whatever mom they want to be.
Connie, you always have a good perspective. You mentioned your feeding options were different for different children. Did you ever feel that guilt start to creep in?
Oh, of course, because, I mean, at the heart of it, I think women know and recognize that breastfeeding is most likely the best thing for your baby. I don't think there's anyone who really is going to go fight against that because it's got everything, the bonding, everything that goes with it. I think the guilt comes from, I wish that I could give my baby everything that I could possibly give them. But that's where I think women need to step back and say, the reality for my situation right now is I have to be content with giving 80% to each of my children rather than the 100% to this, and know and trust that this baby will have everything else that it needs. And I will give it love and I will give him all the food and everything, but that's not everything for that baby. That we want to, formula is still good, breastfeeding is the best, but if you're gonna have a mom who's trying so hard to pump and so hard to breastfeed and she's stressed and she's frustrated and she's yelling at her other kids and she can't get dinner on the table and life is falling apart, is that really helpful for that baby? No, I don't think so. So I think it's important that she be able to say, I feel good about being able to make this decision and doing the best that I can for them at this time.
Have to accept it ourselves before
That's
we
right,
even...
which is a mom thing. That's a huge issue. And I know, like in the parenting, the challenging child, one of the psychologists says, as a parent, that's the hardest thing, is that for the first time we have to accept being less than 100% when we really want to, but we just can't.
Well, and I think that for the mom to, you know, breastfeeding is natural, but that doesn't mean you just automatically know how to do it. There needs to be a learning phase. You know, if you never saw anyone walk, you probably wouldn't get up and walk. And so for women who are pregnant or haven't had their babies yet, you know, spending time around other women who are breastfeeding so they see how that interaction happens, and so they don't just think that the baby's magically going to come out and know exactly what to do, can be another way to get people on a good path.
That education is so important. Along the lines of guilt, earlier this year there was a cover story on Time magazine. I'm sure you're both familiar with it. It showed a 3-year-old nursing, and the quote said, "Are you mom enough?" And the cover story was talking about what's called attachment parenting. And one aspect of this type of parenting is extended breastfeeding into the toddler years, as well as co-sleeping and baby wearing, which basically means toting your baby around, you know, in a sling or whatnot. Do you think this type of parenting is healthy when we talk about that guilt and that mother burden? Is this a healthy type of parenting?
I personally don't think so. I've read research on that, and what they've also said is that the research backs up that the kids actually can become more clingy, and I think that makes sense. I think every stage, a baby, a toddler, a child, they have natural instincts, and their instinct is to get their needs met. And there's certain things that parents do along the way to help them transition into the next level, the next development level. And if any child is beyond that development level and they're still back in that stage, demanding, on demand, anything, whether it's, you know, I want to have my toys, I want to have whatever, I don't think that's very helpful. My husband is so funny. He used to do animal husbandry when he was young, and he said he'd watch the cows, and he'd say when it was time for that calf to stop nursing, the calf would come up and that cow would just go bam with the foot, and the cow would be like, okay, and then go start getting the grass, like, oh, it's a new norm now, you know. And I'm not suggesting we do something like that.
You're not going to kick the baby.
No, you're not going to kick the baby. I'm just saying that there is a natural progression developmentally, and I think it's great that we don't extend that beyond what needs to be done.
Although I do want to recognize that every mother-baby pair, every mother-child pair is different, and it's also artificial to say, oh, 6 months you're done breastfeeding, oh, 12 months you're done breastfeeding. You know, worldwide we see the normal age of breastfeeding completely ceasing is more around the age of 4. And so, you know, some might say that our American babies are falling far short of what they would biologically expect. But if it's not working for the mom or the baby, then that's something that doesn't need to happen. I think the really damaging parenting style is competitive parenting. For me to say, I nursed longer than you, therefore I am better than you.
I'm a woman.
That's not helping anybody. And so what we need to do is do the best for our families and recognize that children have needs, and sometimes nursing at the breast, even a 3-year-old, is meeting their needs.
We need to accept our own situations and accept the situations of others in support of those women and those colleagues.
We need to recognize the situation we're in.
Thank you, ladies, so much. Christy Porucznik and Connie Sokol. It's obviously a topic that we'll continue to talk about. It's not going away.
So.